Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This broadcast is intended for every member of the United States Congress, the United States Senate, the House Armed Services Committee, both Democrats and Republicans, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Specifically for the situational awareness of the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, primarily for every member of the United States Congress, the United States Senate, House Armed Services Committee, both Democrats and Republicans, and the President of the United States. The reason for today's broadcast is intended to cover briefly a meeting that took place last Friday, July 19th, 2024, just after 2 o'clock p.m. Central Daylight Time. After a meeting with one of my provider notified me that my command, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, down at Marine Detachment Eglin Air Force Base, and the commanding officer of MATSIC 21 was contacting them by phone excessively to inquire about my health, my well-being, and my safety, in that the amount of, or the times of contact was starting to become excessive. And later that week, we had coordinated what they call a treatment team meeting, or TTM, that was only intended to briefly provide my command an update on my safety, security, well-being, and how I'm doing. And that was all. So the meeting, started, and my provider notified my command that there was no concern from my treatment team about my safety, my well-being, specifically if I was looking to harm myself or someone else in any way, shape, or form. And my treatment team also rose the question or concern about the social media post that my leadership had acquired and became concerned about my safety and whether or not I was looking to harm myself or someone else. My treatment team notified my command that there was nothing from their perspective on that specific social media post that alerted or eluded or that came to a conclusion of me looking to harm myself or anyone else in any way, shape, or form. And once my treatment team had finished speaking on those 3 points, my provider had opened the floor if anyone had any questions or concerns. And so at a certain point, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez had brought up my my career and the fact that my career is without blemish. It is without infraction. It is without punitive punishment, as in I had not been charged with any violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice by way of Article 15, which is the captain's mast for some services, or particularly for the Marine Corps, it's non-judicial punishment, or by way of a court-martial, whether it be summary, special, or general. And Lieutenant Colonel Martinez looked at me and asked me, you know, he said, your career, you haven't had any punitive actions against you. Your career is spotless. Your career has to mean something to you, right? As in, you haven't done anything wrong throughout your entire military career, and that you have nothing on your record. And because of your social media postings, you would not want to have your career, your spotless career, in jeopardy because of social media postings, right? It has to mean something to you. I did not answer Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, because why is that even a topic? And Lieutenant Colonel Martinez asked me that question on 2 more occasions within that specific setting at that meeting on July 19, 2024. And when Lieutenant Colonel Martinez finished bringing that point up, I rose the question again, which is continuously being disregarded. And the question is, I don't understand, how can the Marine Corps, or how can you continue to bring my social media postings up into conversation on how y'all are going to punish me for my social media postings when they're not even intended for you? My social media postings is intended to communicate to members of Congress and other government officials, and it is protected forms of communication. How can you all try to use that as a way to punish me when it's not intended for you to begin with? And it's protected. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez failed to, well, he didn't fail. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez did not respond to that question. He did not entertain that question. And this is how I took it. If I don't stop trying to communicate with government officials, if I do not stop trying to post on social media to communicate, they will, and that was a threat, they will try and hold me accountable by imposing Article 15, which is the non-judicial punishment, or by way of court-martial. And this is what Lieutenant Colonel Martinez said after I asked him about how can they use my social media postings to punish me when it's supposed to be and is protected forms of communication to government officials. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, he looked at my provider, and then he looked at me and said, he hasn't had any infractions on his record or in his career, and if he continues these social media postings, we don't know if we're going to have to impose Article 15 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice on him, which is non-judicial punishment. And we don't know if it might end up going to a court-martial, specifically a summary court-martial. And Staff Sergeant Smith has not crossed the boundaries yet with his social media posts. But if and when he does, we're going to have to impose Article 15 or a court-martial on him. And your career has to mean something to you, which he asked me again. And I did not acknowledge or entertain that, because I knew that was a threat. And so that ends my overview and summary about what took place on July 19th, 2024 at my treatment team meeting. The Marine Corps knows, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez knows, and my leadership knows that they can't get to me any other way, especially with what they tried to do on July 10th, 2024. They wouldn't send it in a text message about these threats. They wouldn't call me on the phone about these threats. So what did they do? They annoyed my treatment team providers, and which led to a treatment team meeting, which was supposed to answer the question that they were asking my providers. And even after we provided them, even after my treatment team provided them with the answer to their question, that was their avenue to communicate that threat to me. And Lieutenant Colonel Martinez asked me if I was going to, in that meeting on July 19th, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez asked me if I was going to post on social media that day, particularly on Friday, July 19th. And I told him the truth. I'm thinking about it, and I thought about it. But if I were to post on that particular day, it would just be, as I said when I started this broadcast, a brief overview, a summary of the encounter, which is what this is. And I told him I hadn't made the decision yet. So so that's what happened. They used my provider, they used my treatment team to communicate that threat to me. And that's what happened. And now I requested leave to take annual leave, and now my command wants to meet with me about the leave. They did approve it. The event that I'm attending is within the vicinity of a certain location. And my reason for taking leave is to attend this event, and that's it. But they want to talk to me now about my leave, particularly where it's at. And my command wants to talk to me about social media posts. What about my social media posts do you need to talk to me about? I asked them if it'll be provided in writing, and again, my command did not entertain or respond to that question. They just said they'll see me tomorrow. In which I will provide the text messages as well. So I asked them, why do they keep doing this? And no response. So again, this broadcast is intended for every member of the United States Congress, the United States Senate, House Armed Services Committee, both Democrat and Republicans, the President of the United States, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Secretary of Defense, and Secretary of the Navy. For the situational awareness of the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Navy, Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps. Primarily for every member of the United States Congress, the United States Senate, House Armed Services Committee, both Democrat and Republican, and the President of the United States.